Hey, welcome to Texas Football Talk. I'm your host, Jeremy Lockerbie, once again joined by my brother Clint in this episode, talking the biggest decision of summer camp, who starts quarterback. How you doing, brother?
Hey, pretty good, man. I think the biggest decision we had to make this morning, it was when we were going to hit that start button on the record to start this video, man. Everything between blenders going off, dogs barking, things we can't see, and plates clattering. I think we got there and we've started this particular point. Like you said, obviously Steve Sarkisian, probably the biggest decision, actually the biggest decision he's going to have to make coming out of fall camp is who's going to be the starter in game one against University of Louisiana there at home. So really, really excited about this podcast. There's a couple of things that obviously Steve Sarkisian's looking for in a quarterback, and I think he's talked about him ad nauseum in multiple settings, and that is he's looking for an innate competitor. Obviously someone's going to be able to will his team to victory if necessary. Someone with quick hands, someone that's going to be able to get the ball out, make decisive decisions, and obviously run the RPO game, have to make a decision if he's going to hand the ball off or find someone on a slant route. And then obviously be accurate. Obviously, with the quarterback position, you want to be accurate somewhere in probably 65 to 70%. He said Steve Sarkisian said numerous times that the quarterback's job is to get the ball into the quarterback or into the receiver's hands. So being accurate is another one. Those are some of the intangibles that Steve Sarkisian is looking for. Your thoughts on those four traits, man?
No, my two favorite that you just talked about, and we talked about all four before, is willing a team to victory. You saw that a little bit in the Cotton Bowl when young Casey Thompson came into the ball game. It wasn't a blowout at that time, and he steps on the field and he basically wills the team to victory by making plays. And then actually, you can't be a quarterback in Steve Sarkisian's system if the ball's on the ground. So like you said, my two favorite keys out of that, and of course you're going to find a competitor. If you're at the University of Texas competing for the quarterback job, you're probably an innate competitor because you're playing at the premier university in the state. But my thoughts on those facets that he looks for in a quarterback.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing, obviously, when we're talking about intangibles, I think the biggest one is experience, and neither one of these guys have a whole lot of experience going into the season. So obviously making a decision who's going to start. Obviously the second Saturday of September, you're going up to Fayetteville, Arkansas. As far as experience goes, your thoughts, man, on these two guys, and them. Obviously, I'm having to make a decision on who's going to start in Fayetteville.
Like you said, you've only really seen Casey for half of football in the Cotton Bowl against Colorado. What do you do on the first play? Steps out the pocket, makes a great throw across the middle to Cade Brewer. But mop-up time against UTEP for Hudson isn't really a test in my mind, even though he was probably playing with better athletes. It's still your first experience on the DKR turf in your hometown, probably a little bit of butterflies. But I look more at the spring game for Hudson's experience. He's playing with the second team for the most part, offensive line receivers against that juggernaut of a front seven that we see at the University of Texas. Continue to call him a juggernaut. Got experience over there with Keonre Coburn, Fonter Sweat, Jacoby Jones, and they were getting after him. I think you talked about more of Jomo's, stats on the last podcast, but yeah. So that's how I see Hudson's experience playing out, was that playing against our first team in the spring game.
Yeah, so that defensive line is going to be a handful for any offensive line this year, man. It's probably one of the best defensive lines that we've had here on the 40 acres in a long time, and probably one of the better ones in the Big 12, if not college football. Obviously some of these quarterbacks have an opportunity to play with some really, really good running backs, probably one of the better running back rooms in the nation. Obviously there would be Bijan Robinson, Roschon Johnson, and Keelan Robinson. I think take some of the pressure off of what these quarterbacks are going to have to do each and every game, man. Really, I don't want to look at them as game managers, but when you have an opportunity to hand it off to number 5, probably 20, 25, times a game, it kind of makes things a little easier. Your thoughts on that running back game and how it's going to really play into this quarterback?
Oh, I think it's going to enhance their abilities a lot, because if Bijan's going off, and we've already talked about how we feel like this offensive line, the best facet of their game right now is the run game. And if they have to bring guys down the box, it's going to set up, one-on-one matchups with Whittington and Amir and Moore, and those guys on the outside, and Xavier Worthy and his speed, Jaden Alexis and his speed. So, yeah, I think the running game for this team, they're going to be a run-first offense. And like you said, when they get the ability to pass, or they have to hit wide up receivers, or they have to hit receivers in one-on-one matchups, and they can't be 50-50 balls. They got to lay them on a dime. in a position where the receiver can catch the ball and get downfield. As Steve Sarkisian says, run to space, like get clear and get to the end zone. So, yeah, I think this running game is going to be a very, very positive impact on both these quarterbacks.
Yeah. So me and Jeremy have decided to take one quarterback each. Jeremy has taken Hudson Card. I'll go ahead and let him start with his thoughts on Hudson Card, man, going into really fall camp and what he expects.
So Hudson Card coming out of Lake Travis, 6'2", 195 pounds. Watched about 2.5 games of his high school film yesterday and watched most of the spring game yesterday as well in preparation for this video. Comes out of one of the top high school quarterback producing factories at Lake Travis, starting back with Garrett Gilbert and then kind of moving forward through a couple other guys that you know. And then actually he played receiver his first couple of years at Lake Travis because Charlie Brewer, the Baylor quarterback, was his guy. Number 59 recruited in the class of 20. The second highest dual threat quarterback, only behind Bryce Young of Alabama, so his credentials are there. And going back and watching his film, especially the Westlake game, you can see how he stands out among. He's an athlete. Like I said, better athlete amongst all the quarterbacks in 2020. Average long speed, so a guy, if he gets a chance to break it on an RPO, like fake it to be John, and like you'd see like a zone read with Vince Young, he can get downfield quick. Accurate passer. In the touchdown that he threw to Marcus Washington in the spring game, he threw him open. Basically, he made the throw before Marcus Washington could turn and put it on him on a dime and made the play. Has good, can throw the ball at all levels. Like I said, he can hit you out of the backfield on a screen play. This is easy. He can hit you on an out route, 15-yard out route, sideline to sideline. So he does have the arm strength to get it from one hash mark to the sideline. And then he has a touch to hit you on a deep ball as well. Again, 247 kind of compared him to Will Greer. Will Greer started out in Florida, and we know what Will Greer was able to do at West Virginia. Came down here to Austin and beat the Longhorns in 2018. So, again, we talked about him not having much game experience other than the spring game. He went 15 for 25, 60% passer, 168 yards and the one touchdown. So he was putting the ball downfield a little bit. Of his 15 completions for 168, 11.2 yards per catch. So he wasn't digging and dunking. He was actually putting the ball downfield. You got a thought?
Yeah, so I just want to go back to this, kind of talking about his stats. Obviously, he doesn't have a lot of stats, game time stats. You're talking, you're talking springtime, real game stats. There's about, I think he's 1 for 33 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. And to me, when you look at Hudson Card in real game time, it comes across as indecisive. And I know you're talking about, obviously our number one scoring against our number two offensive line in the spring game. Those are the things I expect when you come in and mop up play against a UTEP. Because again, there's no reason that UTEP's defensive line should be at the level of your first string or your second string or your third string offensive line here at the University of Texas. So I just one of those things. Obviously you're talking about the way that throw that he made to Marcus Washington in the spring game, which probably the best throw out of the two quarterbacks in that game. But at the same time, when it seems like when Hudson Card's out there, he's more running around trying to figure out what he's trying to do with the ball. Has a tendency to put his eyes down in what you're looking for is quarterback that keeps his eyes up, be able to look down the field and make a play. And I don't know if he's just used to having to run and make plays, and that's what he wants to do versus throwing the ball. But with his arm strength, man, and his arm talent, which I can tell you that to me, he's number one in this competition when it comes to arm talent versus, obviously Casey Thompson. I think he needs to look at throwing the ball first versus running it.
Yeah, and the only thing I'd say counter to what you said against UTEP is he was the third string guy back then. Like Casey, it was Sam, then Casey, then him. I would like to chalk it up to his first game jitters, like I said a little bit earlier. Would have liked to have seen us blow teams out to get him that second opportunity, maybe against Kansas State. Probably could have gotten some snaps there to just see, how he was going to perform in that second game action. Being the third team guy, you really don't look to get snaps. Yes, it's UTEP. That was probably the only game you're ever going to see a third string guy get into a football game. But yeah, I would like to chalk it up to first game jitters. But again, like you said, he had happy feet in the spring game. But again, I kind of chalk that up, and I'm not making excuses for him. But again, his second real play in college football, live snaps, is against our defensive line. Like you said, it's going to give a lot of people problems. Just my thoughts.
Yeah, no, I think it would have been nice for us to see him with the ones. them to be able to split time with the ones in the spring game to kind of see, obviously running with the wide receiver, the ones, as well as having an offensive line to be able to block, one's offensive line to be able to block for him going against the twos and so on and so forth. That would have definitely been nice to see, but we didn't see it. So we got to go off of what we do see and how he's played and so on and so forth. And we got to go back to what intangibles Steve Sarkisian is looking for. Is he a natural leader? There's obviously there's talk out of the 40 that he's really, really quiet guy. You know what I'm saying? I don't need you to be a loud leader, but at the same time, you got to be able to have guys want to surround you and be that leader that they want to play for. Number two, is he accurate? Absolutely. His arm strength's there. The elite talent of his arm is there as well. And he has quick hands, man. He can get that ball out of there. He knows where he wants to throw it at. I don't think that's the indecisive part. I think the indecisive part is being able to read the defense and know where he wants to go before the ball is snapped. And then being accurate, man, I definitely think he could be accurate as far as those intangibles. What do you see as far as those 14 intangibles? Where do you kind of see Hudson Card kind of lacking and doing really good at?
No, the first one, you hit the nail right on the head. And I read an article yesterday that Chip Brown wrote for 247 coming out of the spring game. And Hudson did say that's probably one of those qualities that he needs to work on, is being more vocal, to take command of the huddle and to be that QB1 type figure that you have to be at the University of Texas. It's not that you can't be quiet. I think we've had quiet quarterbacks come through the system. But at the same time, when it's time to lead and grab your guys and make a statement, you do that. And again, like you said, I think he can make all the throws. He's an NFL caliber arm strength and accuracy. It's just like you said, that innate leadership ability and experience that he doesn't have at this time.
Yeah, you got to. It goes back to, man, that innate competitor versus and then that natural leader piece, because you got to think of probably the most hostile environment you're going to go into is probably the Cotton Bowl. What is it, the first weekend of October versus the second week of October? I think second Saturday of October. I think the 9th of October. You got to think about it coming out of that tunnel. Half burnt orange, half crimson and cream. Who's going to have the moxie to will their team to victory? Because those games are always really, really close. It doesn't matter who goes in number one. Hell, you can have an unranked team and a ranked team going against each other and always going to be close. So who's going to be able to will their team to victory during that game? So I think those two things, man, are a must in the quarterback that we have this year, is someone that can, obviously get their teammates to kind of rally around them and do what's necessary to will them to victory. Any other thoughts, man, on Hudson Card before we move on to Casey Thompson?
No, and we'll kind of say this to the end, but no, I think we are in a position where whoever starts this year, this quarterback room going forward, we talked about this before, we started taping, is in a good position. Whether it's Casey that starts the first week of September or if it's Hudson, I really think that if we pick someone, that person is going to be able to lead this football team. But no, we can start talking about Casey Thompson.
Yeah, no, I just want to add something to that. Me and Jeremy had talked about before we came on this video. Really, we're not going to make a decision now. Obviously, who's going to start? That's one of those things that's going to work its way through the fall. Probably won't even have an idea who's going to start, and probably until 10 days before the first game. I think that's how long this thing's going to work itself out. But it's one of those things where you have to trust in Steve Sarkisian as a quarterback guru, as a quarterback coach, someone that's worked with 10 to 15 really, really good quarterbacks, that he's going to make the best decision for the University of Texas moving forward, regardless of who that quarterback is. And that's one of those things that me and Jeremy talked about, is like, so what if he does pick Hudson Carter? What if he does pick Casey Thompson? And to me, as a fan base, you have probably one of the best quarterback coaches in all of college football, probably all of football altogether, to be able to make that decision for you. So we're in good hands regardless. Kind of talking about Casey Thompson, man, the biggest thing for me is him coming in to the Alamo Bowl against Colorado. I'm trying to figure out who trusted his arm. Was it Tom Herman or was it Mike Yurcich, who's now the play caller at Penn State? Because they could have easily handed the ball off to Bijan Robinson 20 times in that game and still won that game. It probably been a little closer, but someone knew what he could bring in from play one to the time he handed it over to Hudson Card. It was dimes all over the field, man. And I just don't know if they knew that he had that in him, or they just said, hey, you know what? They probably going to think we're going to run the ball probably 20, 25 times a game, or 20, 25 to end this game. Let's go ahead and let him throw it all over the yard, man. Your thoughts on his Alamo Bowl appearance?
Again, he didn't walk into the Alamo Bowl with a 3-touchdown lead. So I think you had to utilize both assets of your offense. You couldn't just run. Eventually, Colorado was going to stop, bring guys down the box. You're going to be able to stop if you're predictable. We talked about that all year long. So you couldn't bring Casey in just saying, hey, we're going to run the ball to Bijan 25 times, expect to walk out there. May have won the football game, may have not. But what I do know is the moment that he stepped on the football field, he did command the huddle. And he immediately took charge. And the first play of the scrimmage, he's has to move his feet a little bit, hits K. Brewer on a crossing route. It was, like you said, it was a dime. Hit him right out of the break, allowed him to catch the ball where he can move upfield, and it just started from there. He made every throw at every level. We'll talk about some of the things that we saw in the spring game that worry us just a little bit, but no, from his production standpoint of in-game, I don't think he could have played any better.
No, you're talking about, a guy that's, if you're looking at percentages and you're looking at touchdowns versus interceptions and so on and so forth, really over the last two seasons, over the last two seasons, 19 and 20, you're talking about 20 completions, over 29 attempts, which is not a lot, 309 yards, 6 touchdowns. So for every completion, you're probably looking at, you get a touchdown every 5 completions or attempts, a touchdown every 5 attempts. Percentage of 69%. You go back just to last year, 71%. And a lot of it comes from that Alamo Bowl game. And then right at about 13.2 yards per catch, which is, I think, is what has hurt us a lot. And I think 10 yards, 10 yards or more is getting you a first down every time you throw the ball. I think we got into that predicament over the last couple of years where it's like dinking and diming. It's like, oh, let's throw it out here and try to get 3 to 4 yards. Let's go out here and try to get 5 to 6 yards where there was no big play threat going downfield. And I think Casey Thompson allows you to do that because of his accuracy. Like you said, I think that biggest play, obviously the Marcus Washington touchdown, the Moore touchdown were beautiful, post routes, but to me, it's all about that K. Brewer tossing it over 2 linebackers in between the safety on the sideline while making a guy miss, obviously under pressure. It has showed me his really the competitor in him, but also the ability to have those intangibles that really Steve Sarkisian is looking for. I think what I like most about, Case Thompson is his decisiveness. I think he knows exactly where he wants to go with the ball before the ball is snapped because he's read the defense. And I think that's important. I think a lot of the times these young quarterbacks have a tendency to hold on to the ball way too long, which, they're creating sacks themselves, you know what I'm saying? Or really creating negative plays. And I think that's probably the number one trait, outside of that natural leadership that Casey Thompson has, that's going to make him successful under Steve Sarkisian, is be able to be decisive with the ball. Because I think, what does he say? He wants guys to in space. He wants guys moving in space to get the ball to them while they're moving. Yeah. And I think Casey Thompson gives you the opportunity to do that.
And talking about his decisiveness trait, you can clearly see that he's a progression guy. He works through his progression, but the moment that he senses any pressure, he's decisive, tucks the ball in and takes off. And he has playmaking ability with his legs. We've seen that over and over again. Spring game 2018, I want to say he was a freshman making plays with his legs. We're like, good grief. And then last year, like you said, taking the ball against Colorado, progression, read 1, not there, read 2, not there, tuck the ball in, take off, and make positive yards. Yeah, definitely. The only thing that scares me with him, and I'll go ahead and touch on this, is his trust in his arm. Sometimes, we saw this in the spring game, is protecting the football. You know what I mean? Like with that decisiveness, if you make that throw, you got to know you can make that throw, and you can't come back with a 105-yard pick six like Sean Jameson did against him in the spring game. But yeah, that's the only knock I've seen. And like you said, 6 touchdowns. His yards per completion, his ability to be decisive and make the throws and to tuck it and run when he has to have shown me that Casey, like I said, this program's in good hands regardless of who Coach Sarkisian chooses. But yeah, that's the one thing that I see that he could be knocked on just a little bit is late throws to the outside and late throws across the middle.
Yeah, I see that, and I got that in here. Is one of my bullet points. Is confident in the ball he throws. He's confident in the ball that he throws, but I think sometimes he may be overconfident in how fast he can get there. Because there was a late throw in the Colorado game where a guy could have turned the game around. If he would have took the interception, he could have definitely took it to the house and definitely turned that game around there. And then, like you said, that spring game throw down there in the corner where Deshaun Jameson intercepted that ball and took it back for a pick six. Definitely has to watch those, man. But I think that's going to I think he's got to understand what throws he can make. I think it's really good to be confident in knowing what throws you can make, but he also has to be, obviously understand where his arm talent's going to take him as well. I think the biggest thing outside of – go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, in saying that, I would much rather have a guy who just lets it rip versus a guy who's going to pat the ball, take a sack. You know what I mean? If you're going to let it rip, because there's a chance DBs don't catch the ball like Deshaun Jameson does. There's a chance the guy bobs it or hits the ground or he just to make the play. Deshaun Jameson was one of those converted wide receivers when he first came on campus. So I'd much rather have a guy that lets it rip versus a guy that pats the ball 3 or 4 times and takes a sack. With that being said.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think the biggest thing outside of obviously his intangibles on the football field is just intangibles outside of the football field, and I think he is a professional about the way he does things, man. You're talking about. I think he takes the professional approach, the way he goes to interviews, the way he practices, the way he spends his time away from the team. I think he's been practicing with quite a few NFL wide receivers going probably against NFL defenders, man, which is really, really big. But he's taking his name, image, and likeness and turned it into something really, really good and powerful. And that's, taking a nonprofit and giving his money to a nonprofit for the good. And I think he's taking that professional approach. And I think having his dad there, obviously he was an Oklahoma quarterback, having his dad there to kind of teach him how to do these things, I think is just another positive moving forward with Casey Thompson. One last thought, man. I'll get your thoughts on this, man. Both Casey Thompson and Hudson Card are dual threat quarterbacks, man. And if you go back and look at what Steve Sarkisian currently is recruiting or has recruited, they're all pro quarterbacks because he doesn't believe in the run game. Do you think he uses any of these tools from one of these guys in the run game into the season?
In watching Kyle Flood videos last night, you got a chance to watch, talking about offensive line play. He is the offensive coordinator with Steve Sarkisian on this football team. He was talking about the RPO package. And in many of those films, he had, at the time, Tua Tagovailoa. He had some film with Jalen Hurts. And so they have had running quarterbacks under their tutelage. I think Tua was, Steve Sarkisian's first quarterback at Alabama, if I'm not mistaken. Not that they can't run or don't want to run, but it's not their primary focus. Their primary focus is one, not to steal his terminology in the video, but it's like, I'm going to get the ball to the back, have the back make one decision, get downfield. If that decision's not there, the quarterback can run back and read that, then I'm getting the ball, like you said, out of my hands as quickly as I can to my receivers. But I think there's going to be times when it's going to be, they're not going to run RPOs. They're going to be play action passes to Bijan Robinson. And if the pocket fails and then you got to tuck the ball down and run, I think that's an aspect they bring you that a lot of quarterbacks don't. Like I said, their top end speed is and decisiveness when they take off. Again, I only have Hudson Card's film against Westlake to show me that. And I have Casey Thompson's film in the spring game and against Colorado to show me that. But I've seen that athletic ability. And I don't think they'll harness it to be long-winded. I didn't mean to be long-winded, but to answer your question, I don't think it's anything they're going to tell them not to do. And if the opportunity presents itself, they're not going to have them fling the ball out of bounds. They're going to have them do exactly what they've done all their life, and that's tuck it in if it's not there and take off.
Yeah, it's one of those things because you've seen it with obviously Hudson Card, being a wide receiver, out of high school with that athleticism that he has, and then obviously with Casey Thompson and what he's done, during that Colorado game where he took off, down the seam, and made a couple of guys miss and did his thing, man. So I think it's just another tool that they have in their tool belt. I just don't think that you're going to see it as much as what you've had in previous years. I think they're going to be asked to hand the ball off more. I think they're going to have to make that decision in the RPO to either hand it off or pass it down the field. But really, really excited. I think just to take away from this video. Go ahead, Jeremy.
No, I guess if I could answer this short way, when you're building your package for the week, your game plan for the week, when quarterback run game is probably like the fifth thing you're going to do besides intermediate passing game, long passing game, getting Bijan, the ball in space and all these weapons. I think quarterback run game and a package for that is going to be way down your chart when you talk about game planning for teams like Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, and then the conference opponents that we're talking about.
Yeah, I think when we're looking at it, I think where Steve Sarkisian has to really, he had an opportunity to go back and look at real game film with Casey Thompson. I think that is something he really hasn't had an opportunity to do with Hudson Card. He's always getting his spring practice reps against, obviously his defense, which is going to be vanilla anyway, because they're not going to be doing a whole bunch of stuff, as far as looks and stuff. So I think that's where Casey Thompson really has the edge. Now, when you're talking about arm talent, elite arm talent, a guy that comes out almost a really, really high 4-star, number 2 dual threat guy coming out of high school, like you said, behind Bryce Young, who's currently at Alabama, who, Steve Sarkisian obviously recruited. I think he recruited Hudson Card as well, too, Alabama. As far as elite arm talent, I think it's a positive for Hudson Card. So obviously Steve Sarkisian has to make a decision, and we'll kind of see where that goes. But any last thoughts before we end this podcast?
Just one last thought, and what are we going to see in preparation for the fall? Are we going to see 50% snaps, 50% snaps, and at a certain point he makes a decision and then you go away? And I would like to see what we asked for in spring ball, and I'm sure it happened behind closed doors and in sessions that weren't filmed, is 50% snaps, 50% snaps with each getting a chance with the ones. Like let them have the optimal opportunity to make plays with the guys that if they walked out there, like you said, against Louisiana, or if they have to play against Fayetteville, or they have to play against Oklahoma and Dallas, that they're prepared to go with that group that they work with in the fall and have that experience.
Yeah, it seems like they got some player-led practices going on right now. There, I think a couple times a week they got some player-led practices where probably doing some kind of 7-on-7s work. You would hope that they're again intertwined with the one receivers, because that's what takes time. You want to make sure that you're on the same sheet of music with your wide receivers. Timing is obviously the most important thing when it comes to passing the ball. So like you said, kind of see how they do that. But we hope you appreciated this podcast. If you liked it, please hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. You can find us on Twitter at Texas Football Talk, on Instagram at Texas Football Talk, and on Facebook at Texas Football Talk. We appreciate you listening as always, and hook 'em.
Hook 'em.